Welcome back to Alpha Mama episode 2 2023. Very excited to have you all on board this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Who is Alpha Mama and what are we all about at podcast Get Obsessed with Success? Alpha Mama brings you the lowdown on books that change your lives in the self-development space. We do the reading and research so you can sit back, listen, and take the steps to live your best life and move towards a more grounded life that reflects your authentic self. Growing up, I didn't feel like I had a lot of great guidance, and the lack of guidance in my own life led me to make choices that accumulated in me hitting rock bottom by the age of 30. I felt like I had no one to turn to, and that's when I turned to books and started researching how to live my best life. Fast forward a decade and I have experienced total transformation. At Alpha Mama, we believe it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. The only thing you need to succeed at your life is the belief that you can and the commitment to carrying through with backing yourself. So welcome back. Welcome back. I'm so excited to have you all here today. Very exciting. Today, we are sort of vaguely on a discipline angle. So we sort of started the year with like some really great strategies on, creating a vision for success in your life and using perseverance and self-hypnosis to kind of get yourself there. Well, in the last week, I've had a few things happen. And so this is slightly inspired by my own personal life. But this week, we are covering the book, Unfuck Your Anger by Faith G. Harper. Now, I don't know about you, but I definitely have sometimes got anger management issues. So if you ever experience anger management issues in your life, then this episode may be helpful for you. I'm not sure. And you know what? If you have some amazing, fantastic anger management strategies that you want to send through to the website, to the podcast, send them through. We love to hear from you. We love to hear what you think. So, who is Faith G. Harper? What's she all about? So, I don't know a lot about her background. She is a licensed counsellor, certified sexologist, certified clinical hypnotherapist. She's written a number of books in this space of unfuck yourself. So unfuck your brain, unfuck your boundaries, unfuck your intimacy, unfuck your anger, all over it. She's all over unfucking shit. Really cool. So I've read Unfuck Your Brain. I actually, during work, at work, we actually had it on the radio, so we listened to it through our Hey Google or whatever. I wasn't overly impressed. Like, there were a few things in there that were great, but I was going to look at doing that this week, but then I decided that book was a write-off. I didn't think it was sufficient for the sort of content that we're looking for. And no, I haven't done the Unfuck Your Intimacy, but I did decide to give Unfuck Your Anger a go because, so just as a little insight into what's been happening in my world recently, a couple nights ago, my car and a number of expensive belongings like my son's iPhone, a grass cutter, a handmade shovel, a gas shower, like we're setting up this glamping thing or whatever out, all my swim gear, so like my goggles, thing, because I love swimming, stolen from the driveway. So, probably all worth about maybe $25,000. I really struggled with an anger management issue for about 6 months last year, and I'm still up and down about it. But, I had a tradesperson basically say they were going to do a job for me. I paid them $10,000. They never did the job. They never showed up. They never bought the things, and it came to light over time that they were a complete fraudster. And so then that's another 10K that's just gone out the window, and my trust and anger in getting this money back. Police don't care about it because it's a commercial matter, so you've got to then take them to court, and they're not going to pay. Come on, they're not going to pay. They don't care. Well, they pay in small instalments over 2 years, whatever. So personally, I think it's just fraud, but, you know, that's up to the police to determine. And then finally, I've got this like family thing that just came up. Like, I totally instigated it. I'm a bit of a stick my nose into places where I shouldn't sometimes. But basically, like, I had my grandma stay with me a little while ago. She's just shy of 97 years old. She's a legend. And she obviously, you know, she's getting close to the end of life now, and she's obviously plagued, I think, personally, of about some choices she made regarding her assets during her lifetime. So out of nowhere, I didn't ask any questions. She felt it necessary to justify to me, you know, why my mum has 7 kids in her family, or now 6, one's passed away, and 2 out of those 7 children have received a house from my grandmother. So like, she bought a house, and then one of the uncles moved in with his family, and then at some stage it got transferred to them. And then she moved into another house and co-bought that basically with my other uncle. But no one ever sort of knew what the deal was there, other than eventually they would get the house, but they bought it jointly, blah, 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 right? Anyway, so I'm like, a bit weird, chatting to my parents about it. I was like, yeah, she's just like banging on about this, I don't know. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to just look up the land registry, have a look at the facts. What is going on with these 2 properties? So it turns out that I looked at the transfer document for the first one. She gifted my uncle a house, which is now almost worth $1 million. Gifted, no passing of money whatsoever, like just gifted him and his family a house. Then I looked at the other house other uncle lives in. She has never owned that house. So she's basically paid for their house that they own outright. So she's gifted them a house, and that's also worth like $1.2 million now. And then she gifted the other one a house, and she's got nothing left, and she's got 4 other kids. Now, I don't believe that you should ever expect anything from your parents. Don't get me wrong, it's not like that. What I don't understand though is why you would only give 2 children anything, like give 2 of your 7 children your entire estate while you're alive. So you're left with nothing. She's literally got nothing now, and her 3 daughters solely care for her, basically. These guys don't do anything for her really. And yet they're the ones that have completely, I would say, robbed her of her estate, because your mum doesn't just give you a house. They've asked for these houses and she's then given them to. I was pissed off. Did I deal with it like a mature adult? Not really, no. I basically wrote to my uncle and said, up yours, stick it to you, and I never want anything to do with any of your families again, and I blocked all of them on Facey and Instagram and social media. So not really the most mature way to deal with it. However, in my eyes, what I've done is I have been triggered by this situation, and I've analysed it quite carefully. I think it has to do with value, not feeling that 2 children and their families would be valued or more valuable than all the other children. So that to me is very disrespectful, and it doesn't meet an expectation of what I would expect a parent to do for their children. And then On top of that, the blocking everyone's really just setting a boundary and moving forward with my life and not accepting that sort of lack of value. I don't want to engage with them. I don't want to have a fight about it. Don't care. I was never going to benefit from it anyway. It's just not right, you know, and I just don't want those sort of people in my life. So this is where we now talk about the book. Faith G. Harper's Anger. Is anger normal? Anger is normal. It's normal. Look, I just mention all these things. Oh, you know, things just get on your nerves, and sometimes you just, you know, you just explode, or you want to explode. So in the book, it's sort of set up in 3 different parts. So it starts off with talking about what anger is and normalizing anger and realizing, you know what, we all have all sorts of emotions. That's fine. Anger is a normal emotion. It's normal to feel anger. It's fine. Nothing to worry about. What is anger? Where does it come from? How does it work? So that's first part. Then we go into looking at how we can manage our anger. And then finally, she finishes with talking about forgiveness and some strategies and methods you can utilize to develop and cultivate forgiveness in your life for things that have happened where you've felt wronged. So what are, according to research, the 9 anger triggers? Wouldn't you love to know? Well, I will tell you now. According to the book, there are 9 anger triggers, and this is life-threatening. So when we feel like our lives are in threat, then we tend to either fight or flight. And if we fight, we're basically fighting for our survival. So we feel like we have to fight to survive. Insult or disrespect, when we perceive a disruption in social order or when there's a threat to status. And I think in this case, like with my uncle, for example, or even with the car being stolen, you know, it feels disrespectful and it feels insulting. Family, we will all fight and get angry to protect our family. Well, good example, you know, obviously my mum has a house, she's still paying off a mortgage. She's, you know, wanting to retire soon, and she's trying to, you know, crunch her numbers and work out how she's going to retire. You then look at the 2 uncles that have received everything for nothing, and you think, hang on, you know, if you'd shared that around, well, then there'd be enough for everyone to retire on in the whole family, rather than all being hoarded by the 2. So, of course, anger, a family is another trigger. Environment, we are all wired to protect our territory. So absolutely, you know, that's a good example with the car. You know, someone's come onto our property and invaded the space and taken the resources that we have, which is another one. Resources. Humans will go to great lengths to protect their resources, right? And that's something we see a lot in many wars that we've had. Mate. So in order to pass on our genes and to have love and happiness and comfort and so forth, most of us have a mate, and so we're quite protective by instinct of these mates. You know, we protect them because they're part of us surviving, part of our well-being, as well as part of continuing our legacy into future generations. Order in society. So another trigger for anger is our survival, is recognising our survival is interdependent on social order and social systems. And so people who rock the boat or come in, you know, and make a big change. You know, look at Trump, look at all our leaders, Trump, you know, look at Hitler and all these, you know, anger. You know, it can easily trigger anger because they're creating chaos in society and, you know, damaging social order. Tribe. People will protect their tribe against others, and a tribe is basically just any sort of group of people where there's a sense of belonging and a sense of us and them, you know. And then finally, she says another trigger's being stopped. So this idea that all humans will respond to restraint that prevents them from freedom or prevents them from expressing their free will. So that makes me think of people like Nelson Mandela and Gandhi, where they're these really oppressed whole cultural groups in a country being completely oppressed by another cultural group or another ethno group. And they're fighting, they're angry, and they're using that anger as fuel to fight for their expression of freedom and their expression of free will, rather than being a slave to the system. So those are the 9 triggers for anger, according to science or research. And she then goes on to talk about this acronym called AHEN, so AHEN, which basically is a way of remembering the rage circuit. I like it. So A stands for anger emerges from, H stands for hurt, E stands from expectations not being met, and N stands for needs not being met. So thinking about, when you're getting enraged and you're feeling heated, you're going red, you're getting tense, you're growling, I don't know. You can start asking yourself, am I feeling hurt? Did something happen that made me feel one of the things we just talked about? So the 9 anger triggers, was I being undervalued? Was my life being threatened? Were my resources being taken? Were my boundaries being crossed, basically? And why did I feel hurt? Did I have an expectation that was not being met? Did I have some need that was not being met in this situation? Was it a realistic expectation that triggered this anger? Is it something that's life-changing? So these are some things we can start asking ourselves to open up our channel of connection and communication with our anger within us, because this is one thing that the book alludes to, is that anger is normal. Our emotions are normal. They don't define us. They're not who we are. They're something that we experience, and we can step back and we can witness them, we can feel them. And she talks about how it's really, really important to actually feel your emotions. And the thing is, sometimes we tend to suppress emotions when they make us feel uncomfortable. And so we'll suppress them because we don't want to feel that discomfort. But apparently, it's really important to release the emotions and feel them. That doesn't mean you have to go and attack anyone or whatever. You just need to feel the wave of emotion within you. Recognize that it's there, acknowledge it, whether you like it or not, it's there, and it needs to be seen and heard, and it's there to tell you something. And usually anger's telling you something like there's an injustice, some boundary or expectation that I have is not being met, a boundary is being crossed, something doesn't add up here, and I need to, it's actually a tool for self-awareness. I need to honour and respect my boundaries, because this is obviously not working for me, right? So, it's an energy, basically. It's an energy, and she suggests, there's this, it's called riding the wave technique. And it's where you think about each emotion as a wave crashing on the shore. We can't help them, we can't stop the waves from coming. All you can do is you can ride the wave. So you can experience your feeling and develop an understanding of just acceptance of your feelings and acknowledging that it exists, admitting and owning that you're in an emotional state. She explains that a mature way of acknowledgement is saying I feel statements, rather than just automatically projecting your anger onto the other people in the circumstance and saying, you did this to me, because that's taking a victimhood mentality rather than an empowerment mentality. And when you're empowered, you're in control. When you say, I feel this, when you do that, you're taking control and ownership of your feelings. Because a lot of people do a lot of things and a lot of things happen, but how we perceive things is within us, and how we feel is within us. It's not anyone else's responsibility for how we feel within. So it's our responsibility to acknowledge our feelings, to own our feelings, and then if they're overstepping the line, to say, hey, mate, boundary, back off. You've overstepped my line, my boundary. This is how I feel. I'm not okay with this situation. I don't like this. I'm owning my space, not telling them how to live their life or do their thing or be in their space, because that's, at the end of the day, outside of your control. Whether it's right or wrong, it's outside of your control. You can't control other people. There you go. So, Miss Harper, the author of Unfuck Your Anger, and she likes to express in her nice words, unfuck a lot, and use this sort of language, which apparently when you swear makes you seem more honest. So I don't know, because she's a psychologist, if she's trying to psychologically manipulate us through this book, but let's not overanalyze that too much. She recommends this strategy as a way of stepping back from the emotion and sort of making it more cerebral and having more of a grip on it. And it's called SOLVE. It's an acronym called SOLVE. S stands for state your problem. So in as much specific, particular detail, what is your problem with whatever that's making you anger? Bang. Number 2, O, stands for outline your response. Like, what would your usual response to be this? What are you feeling? How? And she suggests what they suggest doing is doing who, what, where, why, when, how. So what's your immediate response? How do you want to react to this? You know, maybe you want to go smash their head in. I don't know. Whatever it is, put that down. And then L stands for list all the possible alternative solutions. So come up with alternatives. So instead of bashing their head in, what are some other alternative solutions that you could explore in this situation? What are some possible other ways that you could deal with this? Then V stands for visualize the consequences of all of your solutions. So looking at both what are the short-term consequences and what are the long-term consequences. What sort of ramifications will come from your chosen pathway of response to your problem? How is it going to impact your ecosystem and the other people in your life? How is it going to impact your relationships? How is it going to impact your own well-being? Are there any things that you need to be thinking about there? And then finally, evaluate your results. Looking at the consequences and looking at the whole picture. Do you need to reassess your response to this situation? And then she goes on to say some other techniques that you can use to sort of, I suppose, calm and manage your anger emotional response is through dealing with the energy in the physical body. So apparently this has scientific backing to it. There are a number of things you can do to assist with calming down your body and calming down your anger response. So first she suggests singing. So maybe coming up with a story about the anger and then writing a hit song, I don't know. Humour, so genuine silliness, just laughing things off, not like, you know, cynicism, just genuine having a laugh. Intentional breathing exercises, mindfulness meditation, mantra yoga, then other physical yogas, yoga, tai chi, qigong, I don't even know what that is. So yeah, apparently mindfulness in particular is really helpful, even if someone has like, you know, had a car accident, has, you know, acquired brain injury, or has a mental illness, or, you know, other medical handicaps. Apparently mindfulness meditation is really helpful for everyone, whether they've got limitations with their emotional regulation or not. So that's just interesting to know and something for you to think about, I guess. When we go back to the SOLVE acronym, which we just discussed before, what I noticed when I first saw that was I thought, you know what, it's a lot like alternative dispute resolution in law. So in ADR, it's like, you know, your BATNAs and your WATNAs, so your best alternative outcome and your worst alternative outcome, so looking at all the consequences of something. What I think is interesting in the legal approach versus the SOLVE acronym, which I feel like maybe could be added to this SOLVE acronym, is that when you try and enter into a negotiation from a legal mediation, you don't just look at, you know, what your problem is and what your response is and what your alternative outcomes might be, and then what sort of action you should take. You also think about the other party. So it's really important to understand, okay, who are they? What is driving their behaviour? Why are they behaving like that? What's underlying that behaviour? What sort of needs are driving their behaviour, their desires, their wants, and so forth? And getting some sort of understanding of the other person in a situation, if you, for whatever reason, want to continue having a relationship with that person, I suppose, in that situation, can be really helpful, because not only can it build a bridge towards understanding and build a bridge towards forgiveness if someone's done something to trigger you, it can also help you connect with that person in ways that you may not have imagined possible previously, because you're actually having a little bit of compassion and understanding for who they are, what they're about, and you're connecting with that side of them. And so you may actually find that you're feeling a little bit gentler towards their behaviour, a little bit more forgiving, and you may be able to build a bridge and communicate, which would be amazing, because no one really enjoys being angry, do we? We don't enjoy it. It's not a comfortable feeling. So finally, this book goes into forgiveness mode. Forgive, she says, forgive. And there are many of us out there who go, do I really have to forgive? Do I? It's unforgivable. Some things are just unforgivable, are they? Well, I'm going to put it to you that yes, they are forgivable. So why do we forgive? Forgiveness is a completely selfish act, and it is a selfish act of self-care, because you are liberating yourself from the anger. You are liberating yourself from the abuse, from the trauma, from whatever it is that happened. Through forgiveness, you are free. And why is that so important? Because when we live in a space of anger, you know, we're like building up all this toxic energy, you know, it leads to things like cancer. It's not good for your body, you know, it increases your chances of heart stress, heart disease, heart attack, all that sort of stuff. You know, your emotional well-being is important. And I think we're finding out more and more as time goes on through neuroscience and science that we're actually our emotional state has a huge impact on our autoimmune system, on our nervous system, and then that in turn impacts our whole body, right? I mean, how many people do you know, this is a good way to explain it, how many people do you know who are like, oh, you know, I do this because my mum did this, you know, my mum was a thing in my... It's like, when I was growing up, this happened to me, and then da-da-da-da. Cool. To some degree, it's okay to talk about that sort of stuff every now and then, but is it okay to live in that space and then let that define you and determine your happiness for the rest of your life? Or do you at some stage go, do you know what? Shit happened and I'm no longer a child. I'm no longer in that space. I'm now in control of my destiny, and I want to just enjoy my life right now. And I want to enjoy the pleasantness of what I'm experiencing right now in my life. And the more that you live here right now and enjoy your life right now, you know, and not allow things to own you or to, you know, be the driving force behind your identity, the more liberating and lighter you feel, you know. Like, I have met so many people now, I've just turned 40, I've met so many people who, they've been through relationship separations or whatever, and they're just bitter and twisted about relationships, the opposite sex, they feel disgruntled, they're a bit, you know, whatever about life, and I just think it's really sad. Like, there are 8 billion people on earth, and, you know, you happen to not pick the best person for you, or it didn't work out great, you know, fine, whatever. But don't let that stop you from, life is so short, don't let that stop you from loving every moment of your life right now, because you've only got such a short amount of time on this earth, so you may as well make the most of it, right? So finally, here are a few strategies that she suggests for forgiveness, noting that there really is no one way of dealing with forgiveness, and forgiveness is a really hard step to take. So, you know, how do you break through the getting stuck in the anger and move towards forgiveness? So some strategies suggested here are, so to feel your anger and pain and share that story with someone safe. So understanding that we can't forgive something that we can't acknowledge. And she also suggests don't spiritually bypass your anger. So don't say things like, everything happens for a reason, que sera, and just like blow it off. Like, actually have the courage, the grit, the determination, the adultingness, be adult enough to just recognize, acknowledge, and work through your emotional experience with self-compassion and go, you know what, that really hurt. And I feel really hurt and I want to cry. And I might think that that's how a 2-year-old behaves, but it's okay that that feeling is there. I have the feeling, I acknowledge it. The feeling doesn't have to own me. I just need to like let it be, let it feel it and go, you know what, yep, I've got a little 2-year-old inside me that gets upset or has a tantrum every now and then. That's okay. Embrace. Another thing that she recommends is to find helpers and givers, not enablers. So make sure when you're finding someone to share your story with that they're the right person and they're not someone that's going to sit in your pain with you and perpetuate the pain and, you know, turn it into this melodrama thing where you're just sitting and wallowing in pain and suffering, but actually share it with people who are going to be honest with you, who are going to give you honest feedback. You're going to listen to them and you're going to grow and move through a healing process towards forgiveness. That's the idea of forgiveness. Next one is to consider the attribution process. So find the non-personal in the circumstances. So that's like what I was talking about when you do ADR in law. So looking at like, well, where was the other person coming from when they did that? Where were they at, you know? One thing she said that I thought was really interesting in this section was, she said, we tend to see that we're not so bad when we do something wrong, like, you know, cut someone off in traffic or show up late or do whatever. We're just like, oh, well, you know, I had all these excuses going on. But when other people do that, we are like trained to see that that is because they are an innately bad human being and they're trying to ruin your day. That's like basically what she was saying. I thought that was actually really funny, because it's like, no, they do not, people don't have innate badness in them. They're not innately evil. They're just trying to get on with their life, right? But maybe they're just having a bad day. Maybe they're in a rush. Maybe they're running late for a meeting, or their mum just like got diagnosed with cancer, or someone just passed away, or there are so many things. They've got a sick kid at home. Like, there could be so many reasons why someone's just a grouch, you know, or does something, you know, careless or mean towards you. She then says, be specific about what happened to you. Recognize that justice does not have anything to do with forgiveness. So just because you forgive someone doesn't mean that you're letting them off the hook. You're just letting go of the anger, or you're letting go, releasing them from your holding you prisoner in your own mind. And don't mix forgiveness with reconciliation. Just because you've forgiven someone doesn't mean you have to reconcile with them, doesn't mean you have to continue to have a relationship with them. You know, you can just let it go and move forward with your life. That's fine. So finally, she suggests forgive the deed, but remember the lesson. You know, when things happen, and especially when we're angered for a reason. And that reason is something within us. We need to be listening to our emotions. They're there to tell us a message and say, hey, I feel violated somehow. And it's actually my job to assert my boundaries. I can't expect other people to be responsible for my boundaries. So recognizing that you're in control of instigating those things through listening and connecting with those emotions, feeling them, listening to the messages they're telling you, and then moving forward with your life. Amazing. Asserting those boundaries, doing all the cool stuff that cool people do. So there you go. Unfuck your anger. Do you guys all feel like released? I tell you what, I made some pretty, you know, like heavy-handed, erratic decisions this week. You know, blocking people in the family, that's always like whatever. But at the same time, I feel like what I've done is I've asserted a boundary. It didn't necessarily 100% impact me, what happened, but it does, for me, it's about asserting my sense of value for myself, for my family, recognizing that, you know, we wouldn't do that to them. And so, yeah, I don't need to reconcile with those people. I don't need to engage with that. I can just let it go and move forward with my life. And I like that. Like, I really like that sort of feeling liberated from, or an ecosystem where there's a lack of value or an inequity of value between people. Because I feel like that sort of behaviour is not, you know, positive energy that I need to be around. So, thanks for tuning in today. Great to have you guys on board. Love to hear your feedback. Love to hear anything that you want to share with the podcast about your own anger management journeys and your own rage circuit strategies. Now, next week, we are on this sort of cycle. So this was sort of talking about kind of disciplining your mind. So next week, we'll be looking at financial freedom, financial strategies, maybe a budget would be good for 2023. I need to get onto my budgeting. So until next week, love you guts, over and out. Alpha Mama. Bye.